एक बार फिर से आपका स्वागत है। एनडीटीवी और डेटॉल पेश करते हैं बनेगा स्वस्थ इंडिया। अपने 7वें चरण में है, 7वें सीजन में है, जिसमें इस बार हम बात कर रहे हैं कि आपका और हम सबका स्वस्थ मंत्र क्या होगा। इस कोविड काल में इस शब्द के अपने अलग ही मायने हो जाते हैं, स्वस्थ मंत्र। तो क्या होगा आपका मंत्र? हमारे साथ जुड़िए और सोचिए कि आप क्या चाहते हैं आपका मंत्र हो, क्योंकि मंत्र ना हो ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। ये वायरस ऐसा होने नहीं देगा। मैं स्वागत करना चाहता हूं, एनवायरमेंट जर्नलिस्ट हैं स्वाति त्यागराजन, जॉइनिंग अस फ्रॉम केप टाउन, एंड अ होल होस्ट ऑफ गेस्ट्स ओवर द नेक्स्ट 2 hours. स्वाति, गुड मॉर्निंग. How have you been? I believe, it's your environment and environmental reportage has not just been a beat in your life, it has become your passion. I mean, when people talk to you, you don't talk about the environment as if a journalist is talking about his or her assignment. It's some sort of a passion for you. So good morning, and tell us the importance of environment when we talk about health and hygiene.
Thank you, Sanket, and good morning to everyone. It's great to see everyone again a year down the line. As we all know, unfortunately, this year our campaign is playing out against this massive sort of central and big backdrop of the COVID virus, COVID-19. And what it is it's a zoonotic. So I'm going to do a quick primer on that. But basically, what we should understand is that the coronavirus represents as a disease, but what it is an environment problem. So what is a zoonotic? A zoonotic is either a virus, a bacteria, a prion, or a fungi that sort of leaps from an animal to a human. So a non-human animal to the human. And that's what a zoonotic is. And with the way our biodiversity is collapsing and with the way the environment is getting degraded, we are very much in danger of sort of, having these pandemic cycles come around more often, and that could be a major problem. So this is something that we need to really, really, because of this pandemic, learn from this and see what we can do. So we have David Quammen joining us. He is the author of a book called Spillover. He's a multi-international award-winning author, an absolute authority on this subject. He started writing this book 10 years ago, and 8 years ago, in this book, he sort of predicted a zoonotic. So I would like to ask David Quammen, who's joined us, my first obvious question. You predicted this zoonotic in your book 8 years ago. Are you surprised that it's hit in such a big way and that it's a pandemic?
To a select group of disease scientists, very smart men and women who spend time out in the field researching infectious diseases, zoonotic diseases. And at the end of that book, I essentially compiled a consensual version of what they were telling me. And what they were telling me was, yes, there is a big pandemic that's bound to happen sometime relatively soon. It'll be caused by a virus, a new virus coming out of a wild animal. What kind of a wild animal? Possibly a non-human primate, possibly a bat. What kind of a virus? Possibly a coronavirus or an influenza virus. Those were the most dangerous. Where might that happen? Well, someplace where humans come in contact with wild animals, in a forest that's being disrupted, or perhaps a wet market. Where? Oh, possibly in China. They told me this, and I put this in my book, and here we are. So am I surprised at the scope of it? No. When I heard in early January, mid-January, that this cluster of cases of abnormal pneumonia in China, in Wuhan, was caused by a novel coronavirus, immediately I thought, oh no, this could be it. This could be the big one.
Yeah, so David, 8 years ago, and here we are. David has also traveled the world basically looking for the source of big zoonotic diseases like Ebola, the Hanta virus, HIV/AIDS, SARS. We'll be coming back to him in this, in the environment segment. I think one of the things that we tend to in our daily lives forget, and that is something I think this campaign will, of course, make clear to you, and also this disease that we're dealing with, coronavirus, is something that will make clear to us is that as human beings, every bit of air that we breathe, all the water that we drink, every bit of food that we eat comes from the natural world. There's nothing that's created that is not in the natural world. Our entire survival is underpinned by the natural world. If the environment thrives, we thrive. If the environment gets degraded, our health goes down the drain along with the degraded environment. So this is something that we really, really need to bear in mind.
My opener, I really wonder what is. And you cannot talk about being healthy and staying hygienic by not talking about the environment. It's all connected and related. Let me introduce all the guests that we have over the next couple of hours. Pankaj Duhan, Chief Marketing Officer, South Asia Health for RB. Dr. Sunita Narayan, Director, Center for Science and Environment, someone who's been speaking passionately about this from each and every platform. Thank you very much, Dr. Narayan. Prince Laksharaj Singh Mewar, Trustee of the Maharana Mewar Charitable Foundation. Thank you so much. Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, President of ASSOCHAM India. Thank you very much, Dr. Hiranandani, for joining us. Chris Litt, Global President Health of RB, is also with us. David Corman continues to be with us. And Bittu Sehgal, Founder, Editor of Sanctuary Asia, Founder of Sanctuary Nature Foundation. It's a very, very important and crucial discussion, and look forward to learn a lot from all of you. My first question to you, Dr. Narayan. Remember, we did a program a few days ago where we spoke about how this problem is going to get compounded because of pollution, right? So in any case, you've got a COVID-19 which is going to attack your respiratory system. And then come the winter months, the entire northern India, Bachchan Sahib, this is very important, the entire north of India is going to be, once again, because of stubble burning, various other things, climatic conditions, is going to be in a situation where there will be pollution. In any case, pollution was bad enough. Now you have COVID-19, a sort of a double whammy. Dr. Narayan.
No, absolutely, Sanket. I think what we are today understanding with COVID is that we cannot discount the environment. The fact is, during the lockdown, we saw clean air. But as you and I discussed on the program, that's not the cost that we can pay for clean air. We need to make sure that we have economic progress, but we also have our right to breathe. And the fact is, with COVID-19, the comorbidity, I mean, if you have the virus, which is ravaging our lands today, I mean, the infection rate is massive. On the other hand, we know that it affects the lungs, and lungs are what are most vulnerable when it comes to air pollution. So we just cannot afford to discount the cost of bad air anymore. And I think what COVID tells us so clearly is that environment has to be safeguarded. If I could just raise one or two other issues that Swati raised in her introduction, which are so important. I mean, the first thing is that if you look at COVID, the relationship between the virus and water is both tells you how important the clean environment is in terms of a preventive agenda for health. I mean, you cannot talk about health unless you talk about clean water. And you cannot have clean water unless you talk about how you can make sure that you do not pollute your waters. How do you make sure that you can harvest the rain? How do you make sure that you can actually, again, give people the right to water? I mean, we talk so glibly about the need to wash your hands in COVID. But the fact is, large numbers of people don't have access to clean water to wash their hands as a preventive agenda for the virus. And then, of course, there's the much larger issue, but the most critical issue of the very dystopian relationship we have with nature today. I mean, the fact is that we are eating wrong. We are growing food in a way that we either chemicalize our food, industrialize our food, and that all adds to the lack of, it increases the disease burden in our bodies. And of course, today it brings the virus closer to our homes. So I think it's important for us to understand how critical the environmental agenda is when you look at the COVID-19, and the right to health and the right to a safe environment go together.
I think that's something that we'll keep coming back to while we discuss the environment. Laksharaj, I'd like to first congratulate you on that Guinness Book of World Records you've set. I think it was 4,035 saplings planted in 60 seconds. I mean, amazing. But what was really interesting is that you decided to go ahead and do this. You decided to plant trees. What inspired you to do this? What was it in your environment that led you to feel that this was the right thing to do?
Well, ma'am, I think first and foremost, the idea was to be able to create awareness. I think there is a lack of awareness that there is amongst the people, and even between the urban population, we feel that there is not enough awareness that people do have. And I think it goes back, before going ahead, we need to go back a step. You know, one thing that we have been noticing with our country here specifically, I don't know about the rest of the countries, but certainly in our country, the one thing that we've been noticing is the fact that when you talk to people, the things that come up very quite commonly and again is that the cheapest thing available in our country is human life. I think everything needs to begin first with starting to respect human life in our country. And the second thing is the fact that everybody here in their day-to-day life, everybody is just going through life. The idea is to grow through life. And I think what better way to grow through life than the environment itself. I think it was fabulous. The campaign began with school children. We got thousands and thousands and thousands of participants from schools who came in. We gave saplings to each child in the school who've taken it back, put it in their colonies or in their houses, made them a part of their family, because that was one request that I had, that when you're going to take the sapling or the plant or the tree back with you, please make sure that it is a member of your family. So that is what made me go ahead with this. Rather than just talking about things, I think the matter was, and the idea was to act upon your actions and make a difference.
Lakshiji, this is Amitabh. You know, we all know that tree planting has become a big push, but it isn't just about planting trees with no thought as to what you are planting. Is that right? I mean, I know that there's been a great endeavor to plant as many trees as you want to, but are we planting the right trees, and are they affecting the environment or not?
I think that's a fantastic question, sir. We basically chose two types of trees. We got in touch with the horticulturists around our land. Our area, fortunately, is blessed with a lot of water, but that does not mean that we put more burden on the water resource that is available to us here. So there were two types of trees that we actually took forward. One was the good old neem, and the second was a fruit tree, which was the local mangoes that are available to us here. So those were the two trees that we had chosen and taken out aloud. Both of them don't take out too much water from the ground, and also that they are very good with harsh conditions and climates, because the temperatures here in the summers do go up over 40-45 degrees as well. And at that time, you do not want that the water tables are stressed, but yet they allow the environment to be able to be cultivated, to be grown, and also that the mankind and the humans that are around it can use it for their benefits for a very, very long time to come. So it is basically generational planning without burdening our ecosystem.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. You know, there's been a great amount of effort by lots of people asking individuals and people from the country to plant as many trees as they want to. You just mentioned that, and we talked about the fact that are we planting the right kind of trees? Is it possible to get some kind of a list of the trees that we should not be planting, so that whenever the effort is made to plant trees by these individuals or by these groups of people, they know that this is not to be done, but we can do this?
Certainly. I think there are experts who are available. The information is definitely very much available to us. So there is a possibility of talking to the experts and the horticulturists that will tell us that what will really flourish really well in an environment where there is a lot of water, what will flourish in an environment where there is not a lot of water or absolutely negligible amount of water available. So lists and awarenesses can be created, absolutely. And I think that is also a need of the hour, is to educate the people who do want to make a difference in the right sense in the environment, and making sure that when they are taking things forward, they are adding value in their environment and what they want to do, rather than just going ahead and doing something and realizing later that the effort was certainly in vain. So I'm sure a list can be created, awareness can be made, social media campaigns can be used, pushed to inform people, educate people, even in the urban and rural areas, of the do's and don'ts when they are planting trees.
सोचिए इतनी जरा सी चीज कि सही पेड़ कहाँ कैसे लगाया जाए, अब ये जानकारी हम लोग प्राप्त कर सकते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं कर सकते. We're going to continue this discussion with all of you, but talking of planting trees, let's go across to Saurabh Gupta, who is at INS Hamla, where the Navy has developed Mumbai's largest dense plantation to date. Saurabh, tell us about this urban jungle.
Well, yes, INS Hamla and also the Bhandup complex, which is where I am, is where you see this forest that is coming up. It's the Miyawaki method, and the person behind this is, Mr. Tripathi, Pradeep Tripathi of Green Yatra. Sir, I heard Bachchan sir also asking this question, what are the type of trees we should be planting? And he was just telling me about that. So please tell us how this works, why it's suitable for a city like Mumbai, starved of green cover. I feel great here.
Yeah, basically the Miyawaki is a Japanese, technique, but the beauty of this method is natural, native, organic, and 100% chemical free. So we plant the only native trees. So wherever this method goes, if I am planting in the Jaipur, so there will be different plant. In the Mumbai, we have did the study and survey in the Sanjay Gandhi National Park and Tunga Resort Bird Sanctuary. So we have planted only the native trees. We never use any kind of chemical. And in short, other thing is,
why native trees? Why is it that important?
Because they attract the biodiversity. If I talk about the non-native trees, तो उसमें जो पक्षी हैं, या birds हैं, या insects हैं, they never, non-native trees do not attract such kind of biodiversity, which is very important for us. A simple example, in non-native trees, you won't find any bird nesting on it. Right. So that is very important for that.
And the result is all here at the Bhandup complex. You can see this is the result of just 8 months. And in 2 years, Mr. Tripathi were telling me this will be a self-sufficient forest.
Yes, so after 2 years, it will be maintenance free. We won't have to take care of it. Nature will take care of itself. And the beauty of this method, in less time and less space, you can get the urban dense forest. And a city like Mumbai, where the space is a big crunch, so in 1 acre, we can plant almost 10 times trees than the normal conventional plantation. So that's why this method is an opt method for the urban areas.
Well, at the Bhandup complex, the BMC is experimenting with the Miyawaki method, native trees. It's working so far, and perhaps this is exactly what Mumbai needs for a healthy environment.
Absolutely, Saurabh, and it's a beautiful forest and in Mumbai city. And Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani is joining us from Mumbai city only. Sir, अगर हम balance देखें, एक संतुलन जो होना चाहिए, इस तरह से पेड़ लगाया, पर्यावरण का जो संतुलन है और एक इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट का जो संतुलन होना चाहिए, वो मेरे ख्याल से आपके शहर से ज्यादा और कहीं नहीं जरूरी है. हाउ डू वी इंश्योर दिस बैलेंस देन?
बहुत खुशी होती है आपसे मुलाकात होके, और अमिताभ बच्चन के साथ में हम पैनल पर रहते हैं तो और भी ज्यादा खुशी रहती है. बात ये है कि हम पवई में डेवलपमेंट किया, 200 एकड़ का खजान की जमीन थी और हमने पूरा उधर टाउनशिप डेवलप किया. लेकिन वहां आप देखेंगे तो हमने 70 एकड़ की गार्डन्स और फॉरेस्ट बनाए. उसमें 25 एकड़ में तो एक घना फॉरेस्ट हमने पार्कसाइड हिल के ऊपर बनाया जो एनक्रोच जमीन थी, और उसको क्लियर करके उसको फॉरेस्ट हम बना दिया. तो ये एक बहुत बड़ी बात रही कि हम ये शहर में भी अर्बन फॉरेस्ट कर सकते हैं. हमने ये 30 साल पहले किया है. दूसरी बात हमने किया है कि हमने सीवरेज रिसाइकलिंग प्लांट लगाई, 4 मिलियन लीटर पर डे पवई में लगाई और थाना में लगाई. उसके हिसाब से हमारी जो पानी की रिक्वायरमेंट है 30% कम हो गई, और हम गार्डन्स, फॉरेस्टेशन में, फ्लशिंग में हम ये उपयोग कर रहे हैं. ये 20 साल पहले हमने लगाए. और आज हमने एक सुझाव दिया था, वो शायद मुंबई कॉरपोरेशन अभी करेंगे. वो पहले रिसाइकल करके नहीं कर रहे थे, और वो पानी जो गंदी थी उसको प्राइमरी रिसाइकलिंग करके दरिया में छोड़ देते थे. अभी उनका एक प्रोग्राम बन रहा है, अभी तक बना नहीं है. उनको रिसाइकलिंग करके उसको फिर ये पानी उपयोग कर सकते हैं. जितने भी बड़े गार्डन्स हैं, इंडस्ट्रीज हैं, वहां हम उपयोग कर सकते हैं मुंबई शहर में। तो जैसे आजाद मैदान हो या क्रॉस मैदान हो या टर्फ क्लब हो, ऐसी जो जगह हैं इसमें सब हम रिसाइकल वाटर फ्यूचर में हम यूज करते हैं, हमारी रिक्वायरमेंट पानी की कम हो जाएगी और जो दरिया में आज गंदगी जा रही है वो भी साफ हो सकती है। और तीसरी बात मैं शेयर करना चाहता हूं बच्चन साहब, वो है कि लास्ट 3 सालों के अंदर हमारे इंडस्ट्रियल और फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट महाराष्ट्र सरकार को साथ मिलकर उनके गाइडेंस से, सरकार की लीडरशिप के साथ में हमने 24 करोड़ झाड़ लगाए हैं। अलग अलग किस्म के हैं, फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट के जमीन में लगाए, प्राइवेट जमीन में लगाए, पूरे महाराष्ट्र सरकार के साथ में सहयोग करके हमने ये किया है। माना इंडस्ट्री, बिजनेस, रियल एस्टेट के लोग और ये सब साथ मिलके सरकार के साथ हमने किया है। तो ये सब हम जो कर रहे हैं, स्वच्छ भारत की जो आइडिया है उसको हम करना चाहते हैं और बच्चों को हम स्कूल में सिखाते हैं कि ये प्लांटेशन कैसे करना चाहिए और इसको कैसे आगे हम स्वच्छ रख सकते हैं। ऐसी बातें हम कर रहे हैं इंडस्ट्री के द्वारा, प्राइवेट सेक्टर के द्वारा, सरकार के मिलजुल के द्वारा। हम ये चाहते हैं कि ये जो प्रोग्राम बनाए हैं, आपने जो आज प्रोग्राम है, इसके लिए मैं आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई देना चाहता हूं, क्योंकि जब तक हम लोगों को ये नहीं पता है कि ये काम हो रहा है, हमको करना चाहिए, हर एक को हम साथ में लेके करना चाहिए। और हम ये 24 करोड़ नहीं, 224 करोड़ हमको करना चाहिए हम पूरे देश में। तो मेरे अंदाज से आपके प्रोग्राम से ये लोगों को ज्ञान मिल जाएगा, एक सहानुभूति रहेगी कि हमको कुछ करना चाहिए, बच्चों को भी करना चाहिए, बड़ों को भी करना चाहिए, इंडस्ट्री को करना चाहिए, सरकार को करना चाहिए। तो मेरे अंदाज से बहुत खुशी होती है आज गांधी जयंती के दिन पर ये सब बात हमने रुचि।
एक हीरानंदानी साहब, एक चीज बच्चन साहब मैं आपको भी बता दूं कि द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ स्टेइंग हेल्दी, हाइजीनिक, क्लीन एंड ऑल्सो टेकिंग केयर ऑफ द एनवायरमेंट. Donald Trump and the First Lady have just now tested positive of coronavirus.
Oh gosh.
This is news just coming in, by the way.
No, but we really need to. बहुत बहुत बधाई आपको निरंजन जी कि आपने ये इतना बड़ा योगदान दिया है इस और मैं आपके साथ बिल्कुल सहमत हूँ कि इस कार्यक्रम के द्वारा अगर हम जितने भी लोगों तक पहुँच सकते हैं और वो हमारी बातें सुन रहे हैं तो कहीं ना कहीं ये असर करेगी उनको और सब लोग प्रभावित होंगे, प्रेरित होंगे कि और भी काम करना चाहिए. I just have a question for Sunita Narayan ji. Ma'am, you have often spoken of humanity's dysfunctional relationship with nature. Can we make any kind of progress at all without fixing this?
Good question, Amitabh ji. I think we have to fix it, and we can. I mean, I'm not talking about going back in time. I'm talking about going forward in time. I mean, after all, today, what we require is to make sure that our agricultural systems are good for our farmers, they're good for nutrition, and they're good for the environment. I mean, that is not an impossible thing. I think it's about making sure that we can rethink how we do basic development. I mean, I'll give you another example. Today with the coronavirus, we've seen this massive exodus of workers from our cities. But as we saw the exodus of workers from our cities, we also learned of the huge number of invisible people who work in our cities and toil in our cities. And we also realized that we have an economic growth model which discounts the cost of labor and environment. And that is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the planet. It's not sustainable for our cities. And that's really something that again can be fixed by making sure you pay the cost of labor, you pay the cost of environment. Maybe it raises the cost of production, you consume less, and that actually leads to a better economic model, a well-being led economic model than a model which is based on just disposing, using and disposing. So I think अमिताभ जी, मैं इतना ही कहना चाहूंगी कि बहुत कुछ हो सकता है, मगर हमें ये समझना पड़ेगा कि आज जब कोविड हमारे सामने है, इससे छोटे छोटे कदमों से नहीं होगा. हमें कुछ हद तक ये सोचना पड़ेगा कि क्या इतना बड़ा जो धमाका मिला है हमें, इतना बड़ा जो डिसरप्शन हमारी दुनिया में आया है, इसके लिए, इसको जूझने के लिए हमें भी एक तरीका, एक नया तरीका अपनाना पड़ेगा.
जी,
जी, पंकज दुहान जी हैं, आप चीफ मार्केटिंग ऑफिसर हैं साउथ एशिया हेल्थ आरबी के। Pankaj ji, we've heard Dettol is doing its own bit for sustainable development. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. Hi, Sanket.
Hi.
What got us started actually was some data that was very, very grim, right? And I'm talking about plastics. Of all the plastic waste that is there in the world, only about 10% gets recycled, only 10%, right? The rest of it may into oceans, it makes its way into landfills. Why? Because there is very poor segregation at the source and there is improper waste management, right? So tons and tons and tons of it goes into oceans. And there is a study that was presented at the World Economic Forum that said that by 2050, there is going to be more plastics in the oceans than fish. Right? And all of this was very, very concerning for us. And in the pandemic times, the situation has taken a turn for the worse because people are using more biomedical waste, almost to the tune of 40%, some studies indicate, and plastics is a close second. So we wanted to do something about it, and not just at a global level, but here in India. Okay? And what better brand to do it than on Dettol? Dettol is a very, very well-trusted brand in India. It's an iconic brand for germ protection, and consumers need it now more than any time else. And we wanted to give it as deep as possible. But at the same time, we wanted to give the same germ protection that is provided by Dettol in a hand wash bottle that is 100% made from 100% recycled plastic. Right? And 100% recycled plastic is a big deal because typically it's as a process, it is very difficult to achieve. People get to 20%, 15%, 30%, etc. But getting to 100% requires a lot of effort from a lot of different partners, from resin suppliers to the manufacturers, to the product, to the design stability.
No, that's
so
great news. You're saying 100% recycled plastic, which means that you don't have to feel guilty about using plastic.
Yes.
Wow.
So this is made from 100% recycled plastic. It's the first of its kind. Right? And we've done this here, and we wanted to bring the best of germ protection in a way that people who are environmentally conscious can go ahead and use that option, right? And we wanted to bring it forward. So many partners were involved into this. Banyan Nation, that provides the resin suppliers for us. Asocham, we're working closely with them. Reliance, it's a limited edition that we've launched in Reliance stores right now, and we're looking to see. I'm very hopeful that this will do really well so that we can do more of it in the future.
This is a new revelation actually,
Absolutely.
Sanket, because in all these past years when we've been doing this program, this is the one issue that has troubled us.
How to get rid of plastic.
How to get rid of plastic or how to prevent using plastic.
Absolutely.
But now with this invention, I'm sure that there will be many sighs of relief from a lot of people. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely. And since you mentioned Asocham, Mr. Hiranandani is also with us. Mr. Hiranandani, can you tell us about Asocham's involvement with this recycled packaging of Dettols?
We've been working with various industries to work on technologies which are different in terms of reuse of plastics. For example, one of the most wonderful things which have happened, Dettol has been, of course, a leader into it, and I must compliment them for what they're doing. We are now even working on the road use of plastics to be a part of it. So recycled plastics can be a part of the road network can be done, and a certain percentage of it could be used for purposes of making roads. Mr. Nitin Gadkari has taken leadership in that segment, and we are working very closely to that. But there are multiple thought processes in the industry which has happened, and these ideas are moving on in terms of reuse and recycling of materials. We are even looking at electronic parts which are actually disposed of and how those can be also taken into consideration, batteries and other aspects of materials which are actually thrown away. So these factors become extremely important. Recently, of course, even the materials which go out from buildings in terms of solid waste management is being taken care of by the cities now under the guidance of the Supreme Court of India. All this is now taking place so that compulsorily the solid waste management is also taken care of. And these improvements are being seen over a period of time. But unfortunately, last 70 years, we have not done much. So we now have to look forward to the next generation of work to be done, which will make this paradigm happen. And I'm glad that this consciousness is taking place. And I think without the consciousness, it can't happen. Because as we correctly put it, individual cleanliness starts first, cleanliness from the home, but also your immediate surroundings are not taken care of by the people. And I think that culture and habit also needs to be recognized and taught to children in their schools and colleges and other things to make them feel that, yes, this is the right way to go.
अब क्योंकि ये रिसाइकल हो सकता है साकेत, ये ऐसा तो नहीं है कि लोग समझ लें कि चलो भाई अब तो रिसाइकल हो सकता है और ज़्यादा प्लास्टिक इस्तेमाल करें, हाँ, क्योंकि है तो है. You know, I don't think that should be a kind of encouragement to start using more plastic just because, you know, we can use the recycled version. I think we still need to have some control over that. Yes. And because as he was saying, you know, almost in the past 70 years, there's been such a build-up that it's going to take quite a while before we can actually recycle everything and bring it back into operation. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि आप लोग आज से लगे कि चलो भाई अब तो रिसाइकल हो सकता है और प्लास्टिक इस्तेमाल करो.
ये एक जरूरी संदेश है बच्चन साहब की तरफ से, तो आप लोग ध्यान जरूर दें इस बात का. बट थैंक यू सो मच पंकज दुहान, Chief Marketing Officer, South Asia Health of RB, Dr. Sunita Narayan, Director, Center for Science and Environment, and Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, President of ASSOCHAM India. Thank you very much for joining us.
Can I just ask Sunita ji one point, which she brought up about the migrant workers. Sunita ji, you know, there are institutions that I've been in touch with regarding migrant workers who come from the villages to work in urban centers. And their observation was that it's not just the migrant worker from the urban centers that finally gets into trouble, but there is an issue when they're in the villages also, because when he went to the villages, he found that most of them were empty. And that's an issue with them because they are not getting the correct environment to continue working in the fields. And to find a better job or better opportunity, they are migrating to urban centers. So it's both ways.
Absolutely. Both, absolutely, Bachchan Saab. And I think one of the best things that has happened, like, you can't call it a best thing, but one of the things that has happened is as people have gone back, they've started reinvesting in land and water. Yeah. And the Manrega program of the Government of India has actually been the incredible safety net for people. Yes. And the reinvestment in land and water and bringing back the knowledge from urban areas back to rural areas and actually doing this, I think this is the opportunity for the future. We need to talk about it a lot more. We need to, really celebrate some of the extraordinary work that is happening under Manrega in villages today to build back water security and nutrition security. And that then becomes the way ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sunita ji.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as Sunita just said, what I'd like to expand on that is the link where she speaks about nutrition and health. The link that I would like to expand on a little bit before I go back to David for another question is the fact that, we all talk about biodiversity. Now, biodiversity is, when we say biodiversity, what we mean is the number of species in any given ecosystem on the planet. So in some ecosystems could be 100 different varieties, in some ecosystems 1,000, in some more. So that's when we talk about biodiversity, we talk about mega diversity, we talk about dropping biodiversity. And the link between biodiversity and the planet and humans is really a link of health. So human health really comes from our immune system, which is our gut system. And humans have thousands of varieties of bacteria in our own body, which helps us absorb nutrition. That is our biodiversity within our human body. And that's really what keeps us healthy. So it's biodiversity in the planet, which is the planet's immune system. So when biodiversity starts to collapse, it's like our human immunity collapsing, which is why as the biodiversity collapses and planet health gets compromised, human immunity gets compromised and our health gets compromised. So, David, we have such a close link between biodiversity and viruses. And this loss of biodiversity has made it so incredibly dangerous for all of us.
Viruses are more dangerous than any other kind of pathogen for us now in this day and age. Viruses must live in cellular creatures. They can only replicate, they can only thrive and grow in cellular creatures. Viruses are not cells. They have to live in cells as parasites in order to replicate. So cellular creatures, animal, plants, fungi, bacteria, they have to live in something like that. The viruses that are dangerous to humans generally come from animals, from bats, from non-human primates, from rodents in particular, but they could come from other animals too, but mostly mammals. So we have untold numbers of viruses living in our rich, diverse ecosystems. Every species of animal has its own unique viruses. We don't know how many millions of viruses there are, or how many thousands or tens of thousands of animal viruses capable of infecting humans, but they are there in our diverse ecosystems. When we go into those ecosystems to kill or capture wild animals, to take out resources, to cut down trees, to build timber camps, to mine minerals, to bring out fossil fuel, we cause disruption and we expose ourselves to these viruses. We come in contact with them. The viruses spill over from the wild creatures, get into humans, and then if we're unlucky, they replicate well in us, they transmit from human to human, they spread around the world. That's one of the ways that biological diversity is linked to the threat of pandemic. If we leave it alone, if we don't disrupt it so much, we won't expose ourselves to these viruses. Very quickly, there's one other way. Diverse ecosystems with diverse wild species of animals and plants have a better balance. When you start to disrupt and eliminate some of the biological diversity, in some cases, it means that there are viruses, for instance, viruses or bacteria that can cause infections, for instance, the Lyme disease bacterium, that are more likely to infect humans because the animals remaining, when you eliminate biological diversity, for instance, white-footed mice, they may expand in number if there are no natural predators. Then those white-footed mice carry the Lyme disease pathogen.
But see, the problem is that you never know enough about the virus. You're learning every day. It's bringing up a surprise every day. That's unfortunately the reality of at least this coronavirus. We learn each day. All right, let's introduce Mr. Chris Litt, Global President, Health of RB, as well as Bittu Sehgal, Founding Editor, Sanctuary Asia, and founder of Sanctuary Nature Foundation. Let me first go to Chris, I believe. Chris is with us. Chris, now,
yes,
talking of talking of this worst pandemic in history, I want to know from you, how have you been responding to the new normal of this pandemic in your work and personal space?
Yeah, at RB, we have had a very busy time. First and foremost, our primary concern has been to make sure that our employees have been safe and well looked after during this very challenging time. And that alone has been a significant piece of work. But at the end of the day, we exist here, and our purpose really in this world is to provide access to high quality hygiene and health products, and certainly Dettol being one of the most important products. And we've experienced a very significant spike in demand, which has caused us to really have to rethink our supply chain and increase our capacity manyfold across our various product lines. We've also spent a lot of time providing access to science-based information. We know that consumers are very keen to understand and learn more, both about the virus, and as science evolves and our understanding evolves, as you just said, we still don't know all the answers, but we learn more every day. We also know that we have an obligation, and we take that very seriously, to provide science-based information to consumers. And so we have been actively engaged in that in partnership with regulators, governments, and nonprofit organizations. And so those have really been the main focus areas for us. It's been a very busy time But at the same time, we also understand that we play an absolutely critical role at the moment. And so it is safe to say that our employees have actually put forth heroic efforts to meet those challenges under very difficult circumstances. All of our employees are also affected by the pandemic in their personal lives. Many of our employees are in India. Much of our global supply chain depends on India. And many of our employees all around the world, but certainly in India, have also in their personal lives had to deal with very difficult circumstances. And so I certainly want to extend my thanks to them, but also really just convey that we are here to provide science-based access to science-based information and education, as well as high-quality disinfectant products. And we're fully committed to doing our part.
I just wanted to ask Bittu Sehgalji, Bittuji, going back to biodiversity, what I was asking about a little while ago, could you explain the loss of biodiversity and how it is leading to the advent of zoonotics? And do you have a solution for this?
Well, first of all, Swati did mention very clearly what the reasons were, but the bottom line is this, that it's love me, love my dog. If you want to get into a forest and you want to exploit species and you want to exploit the ecosystem, well, the species and their viruses, as David said, they will come out. They'll spill over into our ecosystem, and they were locked down in their ecosystems. Now, when we force them into ours, we get locked down. Our economy gets devastated. People die. So there's no doubt about it. I mean, you start off with AIDS, SARS, MERS, Ebola, swine flu, bird flu, the Casanova forest, all of these. What were they? They were zoonotic diseases. They went from either one animal to another animal and to us, or sometimes directly to us. I mean, it's actually, the solution is simpler than most people think, but it doesn't quite suit what you might call the development ambitions or the development dhacha that people now have. How do we do it? Let's take India. Let's look at it positively as a solution. India is one of the world's large dam builders, but to build these dams, we have devastated large valley ecosystems. Huge, huge. Now, when we do this, what we've done is neither is our economic return coming, which means the dams are failing. And why? Because the catchments are destroyed. Now, look at all the migration that's taken place. You were speaking about this from urban India back to rural India, and how do we employ them? The answer staring us in the face, Samadji, ki employ them where they work to repair the ecosystems so that when the rain falls, less silt goes into our reservoir, more silt goes is stopped by those plants. That means carbon comes down, which means aquifers get filled, people get jobs. The aquifers will feed the farms, the farm wells. The wells produce more food, and therefore our GDP goes up for whatever measure the GDP is. It's a win-win. But if we continue to say that, look, fossil fuels must be used, coal, oil, gas, well, let me be blunt. These are zombies. These are dead men walking. They just don't know they're dead. Anybody who's invested in oil, coal, gas is going to lose his money, whether he's a small investor or a large investor. Why not invest in bringing back the degraded forests that we've degraded? विकास के नाम में जो हमने विनाश थोपा है इस देश पे, वो क्यों ना हम पलट दें? और जल्द से जल्द, Sunita Narayan correctly said, Narega is there, employ people. All they have to do is to work on nature-based solutions, hold the soil, hold the moisture. The soil will hold most of the carbon, floods will be reduced, droughts will be reduced, water will be available, and the pandemics that we are talking about, like iron filings to a magnet, animals will retreat into the ecosystems provided they are spacious enough to accommodate them, and we can go on with our lives. I am simplifying it because of time, but I think David has given an excellent explanation as to how this happens, and it is within our capability to do this. We've got our sanctuaries and national parks, fine, but we need to expand biodiversity outward, for which people who live on the outside must become the primary beneficiaries of biodiversity renewal, whether it's tourism, whatever it be. If we make sure that the local communities are the primary beneficiaries, we will be able to control the economy and we'll be able to actually prevent the next pandemic, which is what Sanctuary is working on now with the Corbett Foundation. Stop the slaughter of wildlife and prevent the next pandemic.
I was just going to come to that, really. So as Mr. Bachchan asked about biodiversity and the direct link. So imagine that there are many, many species on the planet, and all these species have viruses. These viruses, as David Quammen explained, can only live in living cells. So now when, let's say there are 3 species in a place, and they get either endangered or compromised, or their numbers start to drop, the virus, even though it's not a living thing, has an evolutionary imperative, which is to survive, which means it will bail a sinking ship and leap to the next thing that is there and alive. So when we reduce biodiversity, which means we start messing with the planet's balance, who is the biggest sort of walking source of food and buffet for a virus? Human beings. There are 7 billion of us on this planet. So for anything to survive, it's going to leave something that's endangered and leap onto something that is so much of us. We're everywhere. We're going into places we never went into before. So in a big picture, imagine, we say Mother Nature. Mother Nature is because she is the mother. Now, in most instances when we are born, the umbilical cord is cut and we get on with life from our mothers, although we always love and look to them for nurturing. But with Mother Nature, imagine you're living in a permanent gestation period. That umbilical cord is never cut, because if that umbilical cord to Mother Nature gets cut, that means we're dead. As Bittu said, dead men walking. So I think to understand this is so key, because there is no way to get to future good health without this basic ecological foundation staying strong. And the illegal wildlife trade, as Bittu mentioned, where we bring these wild animals into wet markets and then we consume them, we're just creating this perfect storm for like a permanent sort of cycle of pandemics to keep happening.
No, I think some similes are very well given.
Absolutely. We need to, yes. Absolutely, we need to respect Mother Nature. We need to respect environment as much as we respect human life. Chris, my question is to you. We are saying that we need to respect the environment if we need to be healthy. Now, this biodegradable degradable packaging that we've been talking about, it's one initiative in that direction. Now, what else do you have planned if we talk about taking some actions at global level?
Yeah, we completely agree with many of the views that have been expressed today. We certainly want to do our part. If you think about how revolutionary plastics were, the consumer industry, and frankly for many industries, I think we need something similar to that kind of revolutionary impact. We need a recycling revolution and need packaging innovation revolutions. And that's what we're committed to at RB. We want to lean into all new technologies for recyclability. Obviously, we still have to ensure that the packaging in question performs, that it's safe for consumers, but we are very keen to do more of this. And one of the things that's really important is to understand that this requires both companies like us to do our part, which we are committed to doing, and we want to do very fast. We want to go as fast as we possibly can. And we believe that consumers want us to do that as well. But it requires systemic solutions. So it's important, for instance, access to recycled plastics is still an issue in many parts of the world.